My guest on this episode of the Neil Wilkins podcast is Alex Petruchenya. Now, Alex is a healthcare, IT, AI, product marketing specialist. There's a whole bunch of stuff that Alex does, and we're going to go deep into the value that this can bring to all of us, even if we're not product specialists, because the topic we're going to talk about today is supercharging product narratives. And there is nowhere more complex than that intersection between healthcare, technology, AI, product marketing, and everything that you do, Alex, basically, isn't it? It's a complicated space.
Oh, it absolutely is. And it's evolved only more so with AI. I've seen it not only in the health tech space, but also in marketing as well. So to kind of be at that intersection has been a very wild journey, indeed.
Yeah, it's exciting. I mean, just for people who don't know you, give a little bit of background as to how you got to kind of where you are today, because you didn't start in marketing, did you? There was a bit of a journey prior to that. So, yeah, just give us a little indication of kind of how that sort of thing evolved for you.
Absolutely, Neil. There was definitely a bit of a pivot. I actually started out up at Columbia University. I wanted to be an epidemiologist, and sort of last minute, I was a month into school and decided that, I'm not sure if this is the right path for me. Maybe I can travel in the meantime and just gain a little bit more exposure to the world. So I ended up taking a gap year. And during that time, to sustain my travels, I had graduated with a minor in writing. So I was like, I wonder if folks would actually pay for, copywriting services. So copywriting very quickly segued into marketing services and advertising. I had started to dabble in Facebook ads, and a lot of my clients, I truly welcome the scope creep, basically, because that's what essentially helped me learn and grow as a marketer. And before I knew it, I was working with various health tech companies, doing long form copywriting for them. And it really just ballooned from there. By the time that I got back from my travels, I decided that I didn't want to go back to school, that I really wanted to continue to work in this space of marketing and B2B marketing, specifically with health tech companies. And it evolved from there. And here I am now.
Somebody who welcomes scope creep. I think you're the first person I've ever heard say that that's a good thing, but it's a mindset, isn't it? I mean, I suppose at that sort of time, the idea of almost allowing, new stuff to kind of come at you from left field, right field, and pretty much any direction was actually probably quite sort of inviting and quite sort of engaging for you. It must have been a really exciting time.
I think so too. And one of my values just in life has always been learning and exploring. So I didn't really see it as something that would take away. I think it would only add. And it definitely did add, because that was a time of really high growth for me. And I was able to pick up a lot of new skills and really even market myself better. So I think it ultimately ended up working out for sure.
Do you find, I mean, because obviously there's kind of cross section of the industries and, the kind of the angles that you've taken, there's technicality and there's complexity. Do you find yourself personally drawn to that as a challenge? Because I think a lot of people would turn and run from that and think, give me something simple, give me the obvious and, make it easy for me. But it sounds like you kind of welcome challenges.
I think that's probably very accurate, a very accurate assessment, Neil. I think I've always been passionate about healthcare in general. It started out in college thinking that I might have wanted to be a doctor, and then that transitioned into maybe I want to do public health. But I realized that maybe working in that space wasn't probably the right time for me, and investing more in school just wasn't right. But I have certainly always welcomed complexity. I really have always enjoyed the process of taking something very complex and distilling it down into its basic parts and presenting it in a way that really draws and attracts people. So I think that's probably why I love product marketing so much and love being in this space, and specifically in health tech. And I don't know how much you know about health tech, or for the audience that's tuning in, if we have any health tech marketers, I think you realize how complex it is. You have various spin-offs, whether you're looking at, and specifically even in American healthcare, I'm sure it's quite different in the UK too, but You've got value-based care, and you've got areas where technology is helping the clinicians. You've got a tech that's helping payers. So it can be very, very sprawling. And there's all this new tech now, especially with AI going into all these other spaces, whether it's home health. So it really is like a very complex web. And being able to understand the space and distill it in a way that makes it marketable and makes it understandable is really important, because if we ourselves as the marketers are confused in it, imagine how the buyers feel. So I always had a passion to make things as simple as possible so that people don't feel overwhelmed when they're starting their buyer's journey.
So inevitably, we're going to obviously be talking about AI and the part that plays in your work, but I guess more generally as well. But before we do that, there's a word that you've said about 2 or 3 times, which I think then is clearly going to be important here. It's this word distill, because it feels when something is complex and really quite technical, or maybe somebody is thinking, well, I want to get into kind of product marketing because, I'm done with just the generic comms side of marketing and social media and all that kind of stuff. We'll talk about kind of promotional communications a little bit later, I'm sure. But when it comes to distilling, where do you actually begin? Because if you're looking at sort of health tech and you're looking, well, any kind of sort of tech products, really, they are super complex. There is so many different layers and levels of, information, be it features or benefits or more tech specs and things like that. Where do you actually even begin?
It's a really great question, Neil. I think that the way that I've sort of developed my own frameworks and processes of working over time for complex technologies is, and we'll get into this a little bit later because I do have couple of tips for the audience as to how to frame up a product narrative when you get down into the tactical side of things. But something that's always helped orient me is to start with the user. So when you are imagine you're a new product marketer at a health tech company or any other complex technology company, and you start, and it can be quite even overwhelming for yourself as you're trying to understand what it is the company is selling, all the various parts of the product suite. I think the easiest place to start, whatever that you're owning as the product marketer, start with the user and take like 2 weeks to completely dive deep into the user, and even forget about the technology that you're selling for a second. Understand their day-to-day life. The equivalent of that for someone like me would be like if someone were to try to understand Alex Petruchenya and what I do in my day-to-day life as a product marketer. They would need to learn that I work from home. They would need to learn all the various types of tools that I use, whether it's Slack or Gmail, HubSpot, understand my gripes with each, understand how I structure my day, the most challenging parts of the day with the kind of people that I work with, what are the challenges of working with the product team or the customer success team, and what are my most favorite parts of working with all of those teams, right? So it really actually starts by going back to basic and almost doing this sort of self-immersion in the person, in this persona, and being able to better visualize how do they actually spend their day. Because when you understand their workflows and when you understand their psychology and their mindset, it goes from just being a really kind of silly persona on a page to a real person, because you are selling to real people. And I think people forget that in B2B tech too, because it just has that extra layer of jargon, if you will. But if you get down to the person who will be using it, you will have not only a lot more empathy, but B, you will start to understand where the tech that you sell fits in better to their workflow.
So I think there's something here then, isn't there, about kind of going beyond just purely the creativity of the message or the writing or the words, and actually thinking about the kind of workflow or process mapping, because I'm hearing that coming at me from, all different angles at the moment, I'm guessing because of automation and AI and, all these amazing efficiencies that we're looking to get. I kind of hear process mapping a lot, but it kind of applies here, doesn't it, for a particular customer or user? Because if we can understand their life flow or day flow, which is a similar kind of thing, but on their terms, then we can start to dovetail our kind of offer into those moments, can't we, actually, through their day?
That's exactly it, Neil. And I think that, don't get me wrong, I love the creative sides of marketing. I love copywriting. It's how I started my career. But to really get to that point where you have enough of that fodder to create really compelling copy or really, really compelling product narratives, even, you have to understand your user really deeply, and to really immerse yourself, you got to kind of go onto the subreddits. You have to interview those customers. You have to watch sales call recordings to really kind of imbibe what it is these users are struggling with. So I totally agree. I think process is very important to understand it, but the creative part comes later once you understand that initial flow a little bit better.
How do you, I mean, certainly within the industries that, you're involved in, either with clients or with the work that you're doing, how do you what is your view on doing kind of very deep research to then inform, say, the product narrative that you're going to then be crafting? Or does it kind of also come from within? Because I'm guessing you could be developing product or seeing some kind of technical service that maybe people haven't encountered before, so they wouldn't necessarily have an opinion on it. There's almost like you're hitting them with something brand new, which of course, if you research that in advance, is like, well, I don't know, because I've never experienced that before. How do you kind of come at it from that angle? Because if you were saying a startup, there might not be some kind of legacy opinion out there. So even though you might know the target audience's kind of day-to-day flow of what they're doing, and you looking to tap into it, they might not even understand what it is you do from kind of ground zero.
That's a great question. I think that I'm always in the mindset of going back to basics and trying to distill even processes like that. Like, what would you do if you find yourself in a very unknown space? Sure, if you've been in this industry for a while, you can come in with some of your own background knowledge. Like, by this point, I have a pretty intimate understanding of a lot of the key personas in healthcare, specifically health systems. But if you are truly creating something net new, innovative, and most things are sort of permutations or combinations of things that have been done in the past, just probably better. There is almost too much information out there right now, and a lot of folks don't know how to use it. So you just pretty much have to go to the areas where you can mine all that information. Some of my favorites are just, and again, even if your technology is new, the persona that you're selling to, they exist. That person exists, right? So it's a matter of finding, like, going fishing like where the fish are, right? Whether that is in various subreddits. I really enjoy Reddit as a resource. When I was researching and trying to understand the workflows of hospitals, for example, for a recent product that we released, I was doing a lot of YouTube video sleuthing, and I was looking up day in the life of a hospitalist, and just truly, and not even downloading the transcript and trying to run that through GPT, just sit there and actually listen to these people, because these are your people that you're going to be selling into anyway, right? They're the folks that are going to be using the tool. So sit there and actually watch that 20-minute day in the life, because you will learn so much. Oftentimes, like, they'll actually take their phone with them, and you can see them in action as they're going about their day. And that is marketing gold. Like, it was so hard, I think, even 10 years ago to find information like that. But now, with the kind of uptick of video vlogging basically, and blogging, a lot of people are just out there more, and microblogging on Instagram. So you really can start to dig into, and like, a lot of folks are now becoming even micro influencers in their space. So I would say don't be afraid to dive deep into all of the social media platforms, especially pay attention to areas like YouTube, because they have a lot of amazing information, like truly a treasure trove of information. I really owe it to YouTube to understanding a lot of my personas very intimately, and being able to build collateral and copy that always hits really well.
So I guess the ethos here is listen. I mean, properly listen. Don't just say you're listening, but actually do properly listen. Is that a skill you would say now has become almost a prerequisite for marketing, or successful, particularly product marketing, active listening?
I think it's even more important now, because And don't get me wrong, I use AI quite a lot in my own day-to-day workflows, but I also don't think it's necessarily the cure-all for everything. And it can, if you don't have the right context or the right understanding that you would have gained from all that listening, you also wouldn't be able to tell the difference between something that was a sort of a good response from ChatGPT or a bad response. It's developing your own sort of sixth sense through that listening that you can really even leverage AI to its fullest capacity, because you'd be able to basically say what's BS or what's not, whatever it's kind of regurgitating to you too.
That's important, isn't it? And I think particularly, I mean, just bringing it sort of round to the point that we are talking about, this whole product narratives thing, it is so, so important, is it, to be able to be that filter? Because, like you, I'm a huge advocate of AI and the way it can sort of empower, come up with new ideas, maybe new thinking on a particular topic. Or if you get writer's block and you just think, I cannot think of the next thing I can possibly write about this for the 50th time. I think I've exhausted every possible angle on this particular product or service, and then AI comes back with, oh, here's another 20 different ideas. So we know that's there, but to have us as the filter that says, no, actually, you haven't quite got it right, because I really do know my customer here, and that isn't going to necessarily resonate. Do you see us almost always going to be the filter before things go out to customers, or do you think, particularly say in healthcare and in some of the sort of the more tech areas, that AI potentially could be the last sign off, and it doesn't necessarily need us as a human in that mix? Do you think it's going to be that way?
Man, that question keeps me up at night, Neil. Because obviously I want all of us to also still have jobs in consultancies. I think we're still far away from that. I think we're getting closer, but I do think a human in the loop is always necessary. There's a philosophical angle of humans ultimately created this, so I do think the human needs to be in the loop, and we can't let the technology kind of just run wild and do its thing. I think certain tasks can be eventually automated without human in the loop, but we're still far away from that. I mean, even in the health tech space, there's a lot of health tech AI right now out there that, in the process of, once the clinician finishes the documentation, there are tools out there now that actually help. They're called revenue cycle tools, AI tools that help surface the right billing codes automatically. But there's still a human, there's still a CDI specialist that has to sign off on it and has to kind of run it back to the clinician and verify it. We're still quite away from making it completely humanless, because, for example, billing codes are very complex, and you still need someone to almost be the gatekeeper and to really understand and have that background knowledge. Because the reality is, the downside of AI is that you can get to a point where there's very few hallucinations, but there still might be an errant kind of hallucination that comes up. You still need someone to fact check, to be that kind of guardrail, to be the gatekeeper. So I do believe that that is still critical. From the marketer's perspective, I don't think that we're very close to having a human out of the loop. Even when I use it, if I ever need to use ChatGPT for a brainstorm, it might come back with 20 ideas, and I have enough background knowledge to know that, okay, like 18 of those ideas are not so great, but these two have legs, but I need to build on top of those legs. I still think it's really critical to kind of get you out of that mode of a writer's block, for example. But I myself have found that I am probably stronger with AI using ChatGPT than I am just alone, because it does help bring forth these various things that I'm not thinking about from other disciplines and domains. But having it just be on its own, it would probably not create the most optimal copy, would not probably create the most optimal idea, would probably think through ideas I've already thought of. So I do think we still need people in the loop on that process.
So I want to kind of extend that and the product narrative bit, because I know we're trying to keep this as a theme, because I think you and I could just go off at various tangents and talk about every single kind of
Yes.
concept here. So on the product thing particularly, I'm just wondering how much of this, from a product marketing perspective, because I've been a product marketer back in the day and I've known a lot of product marketers, we tend to, as a discipline, get very tied up in our products, very proud of our products, very kind of, yes, almost obsessive about how great they are versus the competition. And it becomes almost a battle of the features. And it becomes like, my stuff does better than your stuff, and here's the reasons why. And we can back it up with evidence, etc. The user or customer does not care, is then the answer that then comes back. How much within product narratives do you feel, and have you seen the emotional side taking a big part? Because it is very straightforward to do the technical part, isn't it? Because you get a tech spec, you can make something from it. But to actually bring something in that, even from a B2B perspective, has emotion in it, that takes things, according to all the research, takes things to a different level from the buyer's perspective. But how difficult is that to weave into a product narrative, the emotional part of this?
This is something I'm very passionate about, because I think it's a bit of a fusion of several of my interests. So I'd even want for you and the audience listening in right now to think of some recent marketing, especially if it was B2B, that really landed with you. And if you think about that example, if you can surface that in your minds right now, very likely that either copy or the messaging understood you as a human having to deal with this particular problem, because that's ultimately what all technology is. It's solving a problem for a user. So that copy likely resonated because it really understood you as a human. And again, going back to that day-to-day life of Alex Petruchenya as a health tech marketer, right? What I experience, or it's Neil Wilkins as podcast aficionado and marketing consultant, right? So there is a simple way, I think, to thread that emotion without it becoming almost like too much emotional storytelling, where you are starting to already like miss all the technical aspects of what you have to market as a product marketer. I really like to go back and I like to draw from classical story structure. It's really that simple. I'm a big reader. I think I read maybe 50 to 60 books a year, maybe roughly half of them are fiction. And they've taught me a lot about, I borrowed a lot from reading and from writing myself. I also write on the side, and as a human, I think like story is probably one of the most ancient ways of communication. And it's been embedded in us, the way that we've even passed down knowledge thousands and thousands of years ago. It's been through our oral history. So story is very much I would almost go as far as saying it's somewhere in our genetics for us to understand and to resonate with story. And once you understand story structure, it's like you can't unsee it. You see it in every single movie that you watch or TV shows. You can start to map out, here's the inciting incident, here's the hook, here is the point of no return, or here's the midpoint, here is the build up to the climax, and it always starts at the 85% mark. So, and again, at the very end, you have the resolution, right? So that is a consistent scaffolding, if you will, that you see in every single story. And I think a way to naturally, something that's been very successful for me, and I think why a lot of the collateral or the work that I've done and throughout my career has started to really resonate more with buyers, is because story is a really natural way to get that user emotion and the user context in without it feeling too fluffy and without you missing all the technical details. So when you start to go to write your product narrative, and I do have a template for this that is like, it's very streamlined by this point, there's a way to organize it in acts, if you will. So you've got an act one, and in act one, you want to paint the picture of the challenge, and this is the day-to-day life of the user and all the issues that they're experiencing before your solution comes into play. Then the transition from the Act 1 and 2. And you really, by the way, in Act 1, you really want to go into detail about how painful this problem is for the user. You should be able to understand on the psychological level some of the thoughts that they have and whatnot, the day-to-day workflow level as well. And in Act 2, that's when they sort of realize, I need something better. I need something that can improve my life. I need to not be able to document so much. Like, again, going back to a very recent example of a launch that I worked on where I was researching hospitalists. They have to struggle, for example, with 3 different types of critical documentation when they're admitting a patient, or whether they are taking the daily hospital course of the patient, and then of course upon discharge. So what kind of solution, like to really go into how painful all of these 3 steps are in the process, is super important. And then enter your solution, and that's Act 2. So really, this is the part where you can start to weave in those technical elements. Okay, so this is the value proposition of the various features in our product, right? And this is how the user would start to use them. And then Act 3 is like the perfect world after. So Act 1 and 3 are almost like mirror images of each other. So the same way that you went into all of the problems and really describe the problem in the first act, here you want to describe that perfect world now. Now that they have your solution in place, how are they the hero now of the journey? Now that they have this AI scribe in place, what are they now doing with their time? Are they like able to leave shifts earlier and actually see their kids and have fun with their families, play pickleball or something? Really paint that after and try to get sound bites from the actual users of what they are doing now with their time. Again, a very specific example to a launch that I had just worked on. So I think if you follow that narrative and you sort of house it in its own messaging house, it becomes a source of truth. And now that I've started to do this process more and more, it's helped me so much with my own workflows and being able to, like, anytime I need to create any sort of new collateral, I go back to this product narrative, and I have one for every product. I have one for every feature. It keeps things really organized. And what's cool too is I house these in Notion. So I'm able to see, like, when people like in the company are checking it out, and you'd be really surprised, Neil, but people use it. They go and view it because that's the thing about story. There's something almost, this addictive quality to it. There's this immersive quality to it where you go back to it and you re-immerse yourself. And I think that's even how we are keeping our own internal teams better aligned on the narrative and how to message, because people keep popping open that doc and they are re-engaging with that story, and they're better, again, like they're building that own narrative for them in their head. So a bit of a long-winded answer, but it's certainly a topic I'm very passionate about how to kind of weave that emotional storytelling in without it being so overwhelmingly too much on the ethos side and not enough of the technical details.
I think I'm really, really pleased that you kind of covered it in that way, Alex, because I think, the practicality that comes through there is great, because I think, not everybody does exactly what we do, or, they've got a different kind of almost translation of the topics that we're talking about. So to actually bring it to life in that really practical sense is, I think, very, very helpful for all of us. And it just had me thinking as you were describing that, I'm just wondering, and this is I guess more of a rhetorical kind of question than an absolute, but it just got me thinking about, is this going to be the new way of, I was going to say people searching, but it's not people. This is AI searching, because as AI agents start to search for us, and people will say, oh, Neil, that's not going to happen anytime soon. Well, it is, because if you're asking ChatGPT or Perplexity or any of the others to go out and do a search on a piece of information, it sounds and feels to me like this kind of storytelling is going to be so much more appealing to an AI to be able to pick up a story and a narrative rather than just a technical specification, so that they can get all the nuances and share that back to their human. Is this going to be the way that we're going to be able to AI optimize as well as search engine optimize? It feels this is the new way of communicating with both machine and human.
I actually would hope that it would be, because it would create a lot more empathy in B2B marketing. I can't tell you how many times I've been on a website and I've read the copy, and again, I have intimate knowledge of these personas in the health system space specifically, and I just know off the bat, this copy would not resonate. It almost just seems like um, kind of a mishmash of past copy that I've seen that doesn't resonate, and it has all this jargon in it. I think that what this framework does of going back to classical story structure is it forces marketers to not be lazy and to really understand their users first, and to not always think from the perspective of the technical aspect, not from the aspect of the product, but to really think first and foremost to see. I mean, Neil, there are literally story structures out there that are called the hero's journey. And again, our user is the hero. They are the ones that are using this tool, and they're the ones that, and hopefully the tool works, that after they use it, they should feel like a hero. They should feel that their life has improved, even if it's just marginally after using the tool. And I do hope that story structure could be used, because I do think it would create better marketing, and I do think that it could create just better training for AI models as well.
How would you advise then somebody who's working in, let's call it a B2B environment, might be quite technical, might not be tech as such, but it's quite a technical environment, very product driven, maybe a manufacturer, for example, who are kind of creating actual physical, tangible products. And we've always done it this way, would be the answer from the business, coming back to the marketer who says, well, Alex has taught me how to do it this way, and this sounds really good, and we're going to get more customers because Alex says so. And then the business turns around to them and says, no, we need to be pushing the technical specification here. We're not about use cases and emotion and all this kind of storytelling stuff. Just sell the features and benefits. Where does that marketer, where do they go with that? Because if culturally it's really embedded, and a lot of people listening to this will probably be not in startups or kind of, fast moving tech, there'll be something, a legacy kind of business. Where do they take that conversation from that point? Because that's a hard thing. It's almost pushing water uphill, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it's a matter of gathering data slowly over time. I know that in organizations, change takes a while. It's typically a lot more slow moving in B2B organizations. So I would say, if this is a framework that resonates with you as a product marketer, start using it. And I think the first pass is just seeing how internal teams, other folks on the marketing team, people in sales, how they're resonating with it. Even for something where you're creating physical products, if you're in the manufacturing space, if sales teams, if you're getting some kind of feedback from sales, just ask them, like, how are you resonating with this new narrative? How are you using it in your selling, in your cold calls? If you get overwhelming responses that, I really like the way that you distill this, I was able to create my own really unique pitch by using all the information you had in that narrative. Document that. Just simply document that I got this feedback from this salesperson on this day, and then just sort of start to accumulate those data points. Because even if it's not a metric, a sort of a number driven data point, if you have 15 people over time saying that they really resonate even internally with that, that's gold. And the other thing I would suggest too is try to get in front of as part of like the process for you to create a narrative. Ideally, you're either listening in on customer calls with the product team, or you're just even able to meet with customers somehow. Run it by them. They like to see that kind of stuff. You can even show them parts of your narrative. Like, does this resonate with you? I noticed that you really struggle with this, and we're trying to improve our marketing. We're trying to weave this more into our website copy. They will certainly give you a lot of feedback. And if you're getting positive feedback from the customers, that means probably even more than it does from getting positive feedback from the internal teams. So I would just say build it slowly over time. I don't think anything can be changed overnight. I've worked in corporate pretty much my entire career, so I understand that pain point. But I think it's a matter of just having a little patience, because there is probably a reason that you get back that answer that we've always done it this way. It probably has worked a lot in the past, and change does take some time. So just build up your kind of repository of data points, and then you can start to show that maybe we should lean into this a little bit more. I think it's really resonating with people. As you can tell, there's like 30 examples of folks like really loving the way that we're talking about this feature or this capability or this product now.
So play to the human, not just the tech. I love that. That's really good. Yeah, even though we are talking technical stuff here, we're actually playing a human game. It's ironic, really, isn't it? Yeah, the more technical it gets, the more human we need to be. It's kind of this real sort of tension, I guess, is pulling this thing in both directions, so that there's a win-win for everyone ultimately. Alex, I want to put people in contact with you. If there's anybody kind of out there listening to this and thinking, I need to kind of learn more, I need to connect with Alex, what should they do and where can they go?
Well, you can find me on LinkedIn if you just search for my name, Alex Petruchenya. I'd love to connect. I'm always open to hearing from other folks in this space, especially if you're in health tech marketing. I would love to nerd out with you over what you are currently marketing. You can also find me on my Substack if you just search for Inside Health. That is the name of my go-to-market consultancy, and it would be nice to connect there as well.
Wonderful. Well, it's a really, really great conversation, Alex. And it's always so good to meet somebody who's a kind of a like-minded soul when it comes to actually storytelling, because, I think the world needs more stories, the right kind of stories. And ultimately, those are the things that are going to cut through, aren't they? They absolutely are.
I fully agree. And I think it just humanizes everything, and it reminds us that you're still selling to humans, even though it's B2B.
Absolutely. Alex Petruchenya, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much, Neil. Appreciate it.